Well, I will invite members of the audience to join us in a dialogue. You can ask whatever question, but while we're waiting for you to show, I think I will just start by asking the panelists to consider, based on the issues that you raised, and considering the fact that we have so many students in the audience, the issue of sustainability and how do we carry on this kind of work, keeping attention on these topics and making sure that there's sustainability in the generations to come in keeping up this fight and actually achieving what Farouz just mentioned. I'd like to hear your comments on that if that's possible.
Inviting for our guests, that'd be really cool. If you want to just gently slide up a little more intimate for our final conversation of the day. Appreciate it. Thank you all.
Bueno, pienso que los gobiernos deberían tener una gran responsabilidad para preservar, no para el futuro, sino para el presente de las generaciones que están naciendo en este momento.
Well, I think governments have a great responsibility to preserve not just for the future, but for the present generations.
Este año han culminado los objetivos del milenio.
This year has been the culmination of the Millennium Objectives.
Se recuerda, ¿no? Los objetivos del milenio.
Do you remember the Millennium Objectives?
Ahora debemos entrar en otros objetivos del milenio.
Now we should set new objectives.
Donde la sustentabilidad
where sustainability
es el objetivo estratégico fundamental.
is the fundamental strategic objective.
Por otro lado, no es una responsabilidad sola del gobierno, es decir, los movimientos sociales tienen que presionar a los gobiernos.
On the other hand, it's not just the responsibility of the governments. In other words, the social movements have to put pressure on the governments.
Porque el destino de la humanidad no está en los gobiernos.
Because the destiny of humanity cannot be left in the hands of the governments.
Está en los movimientos conscientes de eso.
It's in the movements that are conscious of that reality.
Hay algunos gobiernos conscientes.
There are some conscious governments.
Y por eso es que mi exposición hacía la comparación entre África y la esperanza del sur en América Latina.
And that's why in my exposition I contrasted Africa with the hopes of the South in Latin America.
Por eso ponía el caso específico de Evo Morales en Bolivia.
And I cited the specific case of Evo Morales in Bolivia,
que ha reivindicado incluso el cultivo tradicional de la quinoa y de la chía.
who has pushed forward including such things as the traditional cultivation of quinoa and chiva.
La chía.
Chia.
Sí,
Chia.
sí, sí. Bueno, lo dejo hasta ahí para que los demás
And I'll
compañeros.
leave it there so that the other comments can talk.
I think we need to go think more beyond policy. It's one thing to make demands of a government like the one we have in Venezuela, where it has been the outcome, it has risen on the back of a mass movement. Because there's a negotiation to be had. But with most of the powerful capitalist governments, most of the neo-colonial governments we're dealing with, we have to think about how do we take power back from them. Because we can't, There's far too much discussion about merely policy instead of power. These people hold power. They exercise power. And I think it's time we need to think about that, because if we don't, we postpone even our claim to emancipating ourselves. It's only when we self-determine that we can do that. So the question is, what do we need to do to get that process going? It's not going to happen overnight.
On my point of view, the question of sustainability, if I understand the sustainability of food production, is a matter which must be examined according to each context. Because the difference we can note today between many societies, and I will talk about the Cameroonian society and other society in the world, is that in Cameroon, the peasants still have the property of the land. And that is not the case in many other parts of the world. When we have latifundios and other land property, where a very few number of families have property of the land. In Cameroon, the peasants have property of their land, and they have the faculty to cultivate it, to produce their food. And in this context, the role of the government is to provide the facilities to the peasant to produce more and better by putting in place centers of research, by putting in place road infrastructures, by putting in place infrastructure of conservation and transformation, by putting in place good agricultural practice which can help the peasant to produce more and better on the land on which they have the property. So I think the question of sustainability of food production with the aim to fight against hunger in the world must be tackled according to each context and taking into consideration specific parameters of those contexts. This is my point of view, and I'm talking with the reality we can observe in the context from which I am coming. Thank you.
I would still, in social movement, when you think back, how did Martin Luther emerge? A preacher in a church. The commitment behind it. In yesterday's session, I saw students, leaders, who were there with commitment. We have to nurture that. This kind of forums should continue everywhere. The liberation of the mind has to take place, both here and in Africa. Linkage between us. Media, very important. We don't get your media, and you don't get ours. The formal media which is here is really something else. It keeps you ignorant. You don't know nothing about us. At home, we hear of you only when the police shoot you. but what we don't hear when you organize and you resist. This is the kind of linkages we need. A social movement across. And let us not forget again our history. History of Pan-Africanism. Okay? Without it, in the 60s, there was a big movement of people from here coming to Tanzania, to Africa. I think they also went to West Africa. For us, it was quite a movement to realize. Okay? I remember when Angela Davis came to our campus with Nyerere, and she had a huge afro. And we asked her, why do you blow your hair? Really, because in Africa we didn't have those issues. They were your issues here, to negate yourselves as a being. And she explained to us why it is important to take pride in what you are. And I think this is the fundamental. I see more wigs today than before. Not only here, even at home. I see more bleaching at home. Okay? I don't know about here. I haven't seen enough. But at home, why? Why are we going back? We had struggle for those things. Okay? Organizations like this, fundamental to support. You know, I saw a lot of your will, the students, the way they have worked yesterday, today. These are the kind of things we need, the continuous, unselfish dedication to change. You know, Salem opened here, right? And since I was coming to Atlanta, I was determined to go and see the institute. But we are opening in our festival. We have a Zanzibar International Film Festival. We are opening the festival with Salem. It's very difficult to get a commercial film. But when we wrote to the director, he immediately agreed, and he's coming with the film for free. And it is from his commitment. If he had charged us, we couldn't have it. But this kind of solidarity. Last year we opened with Mandela. And you look around, all the leaders who dared to break the power. Sankara, Walter Rodney. A lot of people, you can take their names. Lumumba, the way they brutally murdered him. They have all been killed because they dared. Okay? So I think that's what is needed. And I feel hopeful now. You see, there's another way of coming. And we should be part of it. Thank you.